After the murder of Abel and the exile of Cain, the earth fell silent. Humanity's first family was torn apart, and the hope of creation seemed lost. Yet from the ashes of grief, a new light emerged. Eve gave birth to a son, Seth, whose very name means appointed. He was the seed through whom heaven would continue its covenant, the bridge between Eden and redemption. But here lies the mystery. Why is Seth, the appointed heir of Adam, barely mentioned in modern Bibles? Why do ancient cathedrals, scrolls, and early texts whisper his name but never proclaim it? Did early institutions have a hidden motive, to bury the legacy of the true line that carried divine knowledge before the flood? This is not just the story of one man. It is the forgotten chronicle of the righteous bloodline, the guardians of divine wisdom. From Adam's sorrow to Noah's ark, Seth's lineage preserved the flame of heaven while the world drowned in corruption. For in the beginning, when Cain built cities of pride, Seth built altars of remembrance. And through him the covenant of light refused to die. The sun hung low over the valley of Eden, casting a golden sorrow across the fields where once laughter echoed. Adam sat upon a flat stone, his hands thick with age and toil, pressing into the soil that had once been blessed. Beside him lay the offering altar, cold, silent, and stained with the last memory of Abel's devotion. Eve knelt nearby, her face hidden beneath the veil of her hair, strands streaked with dust and tears. The earth that had once bloomed under their touch now resisted their labor. The wind that once sang of paradise whispered only grief. Adam spoke at last, voice trembling like dry leaves. Eve, the ground drinks blood it was never meant to taste. Eve lifted her head, eyes red and hollow. Abel's blood cries to heaven, and Cain, our son, has fled from the face of God. She looked toward the horizon where the sun sank, her heart crushed beneath the weight of both loss and guilt. What have we birthed, Adam? Life and death in the same womb. He turned toward her, eyes heavy with both wisdom and sorrow. We were promised pain, and now we live within it. His calloused hand brushed the dust from her cheek. But still, I believe the Almighty will yet show mercy. One day he will raise another, one who walks in his likeness. The sky turned crimson, the color of remembrance. In the silence that followed, a faint breeze stirred, almost like a whisper carried from beyond the veil of heaven. That night, Eve lay restless beside Adam. The stars above gleamed faintly through the thatched roof, and the world seemed to sleep except for her grief. Her womb ached with emptiness, her soul burned with yearning. She closed her eyes, and in that stillness, heaven opened before her. In the dream, a voice called her name, soft, yet resonant like thunder in the distance. Eve, though the serpent deceived, though death entered your house, from you shall yet come a seed, appointed for life. A radiant light formed before her eyes, a figure cloaked in brilliance, neither man nor beast. The being extended its hand, and from its palm grew a vine, strong, green, and heavy with fruit. This vine, the voice said, is your offspring. It will restore what was lost. From his line will come the covenant of light. Name him Seth, for he shall be appointed in the place of Abel whom Cain slew. Eve wept in her dream, her tears turning into pearls upon the soil of vision. When she awoke, her heart was filled with a calm she had not known since Eden. She turned to Adam and spoke, I saw a messenger of the Most High. I will bear another son. Adam looked upon her with disbelief, but then hope flickered. He placed his hand upon her heart and whispered, Then the mercy of the Lord has not departed from us. Seasons turned. The earth gave fruit once more. Streams that had dried with sorrow began to flow. The scent of life returned to their dwelling. Adam tended the fields while Eve, heavy with promise, sat beneath the fig tree and watched the horizon each evening, waiting for the sign she saw in her dream, the golden vine in the heavens. One evening, as dusk melted into a deep blue sky, Her time came. Thunder rolled across the distance, soft, not fierce, as if the heavens themselves bore witness. Adam rushed to her side, fear and awe wrestling within him. Eve's cries pierced the night, echoing through the valley that had known only silence. Hours passed until the cry of a newborn rose against the hum of crickets. Eve lifted the child in trembling hands. A boy with eyes as clear as dawn, skin soft as new wheat. The moment his breath met the air, a streak of light split across the sky, a falling star descending toward the east. Adam looked to the heavens and fell upon his knees. "He is called Seth," Eve said softly, "for God has appointed me another seed instead of Abel." Her voice broke, but joy and peace flowed through her tears. Adam embraced them both, his heart pounding as though Eden itself had breathed again. "Blessed be the Lord," he murmured. "His mercy endures beyond our fall." The wind carried their words across the plain, stirring the branches as if the angels themselves bowed in reverence. In that hour, heaven remembered man. As the child grew, the world around Adam and Eve began to change. Far away, in the land of Nod, the sons of Cain built cities of stone and named them after themselves. Smoke rose from their altars, but not to the Creator, rather to their own strength and desires. In contrast, Adam gathered stones from the riverbed and built an altar upon a hill overlooking the valley. There he stood with the child Seth, now a small boy with gentle eyes and quiet wisdom far beyond his years. Adam took the lamb from his flock, pure and spotless, and laid it upon the stones. As the smoke rose, he lifted Seth's hand toward heaven. "Remember this, my son," he said, his voice strong yet tender. "Blood must not be shed in hate. It must only be offered in love and obedience." Seth nodded, eyes reflecting the flames. "Father," he asked, "why did Cain not offer like Abel?" Adam's gaze grew distant. "Because he gave without heart. He sought favor without faith. The offering of the hand means nothing if the heart is far from God." The fire burned brighter as the wind blew eastward, toward Eden's lost gates. Adam whispered a prayer that only heaven heard. "May this sun be the keeper of light in a darkening world." Years passed. Adam's hair turned silver, his hands rough from tilling a land that often resisted him. Yet in his old age, hope lived again in Seth. The boy grew into a man of great stature and meekness, walking often alone among the fields to speak with God in silence. One evening, as Seth worked the soil near the altar, a strange glow appeared in the east. He turned, and saw a vine sprouting from the earth itself, curling upward, bearing fruit that shimmered like gold in the moonlight. Eve came running, her heart trembling. "The vine from my dream," she whispered. Adam approached slowly, awe upon his face. The vine glowed brighter, and from its center a soft light rose into the heavens. Then it faded, leaving only the gentle scent of myrrh in the air. Adam bowed his head and said, "The sign has come. His covenant remains." That night, Adam gathered his family, Eve, Seth, and his other sons and daughters, and blessed them around the fire. His voice broke as he said, "Through you, Seth, the world shall remember the ways of heaven. From your line will come those who still walk with the Almighty." Eve placed her hand upon Seth's shoulder, her eyes filled with both sorrow and triumph. Abel's voice cried from the ground, "But yours will rise to heaven." The stars shone brighter that night. In the distance, a soft wind moved through the valley, and the river sang like it did in the days before the fall. The curse was not gone, but in Seth, the appointed seed, hope had taken root once more. Morning mist lay low over the valley as Seth walked beside Adam. The old man's steps were slower now, but his eyes were still clear, still holding the memory of Eden. Below the hill, their tents and gardens sat quietly, smoke from their hearth curling upward in gentle spirals. Far away, to the east, a faint pillar of darker smoke sometimes rose, the land where Cain dwelt. Adam pointed toward that horizon. Your brother built a city, he said. He named it after his son, not after the Lord. Men gather there now. They sing, but not to heaven. They forge, but not for worship. They marry, but not in holiness. Their music praises themselves. Seth watched the distant haze. Why does God allow it? Because God allows man to choose, Adam answered. Cain chose to live far from the presence. But the presence has not left the earth. It waits for those who will seek it. Seth looked up at his father. Then we must keep what Abel kept. Adam's face softened at the name. Yes, Abel. Your brother walked softly before God. He never contended, never boasted. His sacrifice rose like perfume. That is the path I want you to continue. Not the way of the sword. Not the way of jealousy. The way of surrender. Seth bowed his head. Then the world will know that righteousness did not die with Abel. Adam laid his hand on Seth's shoulder. That is why you were appointed. The wind rustled the fig leaves above them, as if heaven agreed. That evening, Adam called Seth aside to the altar on the hill. The stones were smooth from years of offerings. The scent of previous sacrifices still lingered. Not of death, but of devotion. Eve watched from a distance, her heart swelling with quiet gratitude. Adam set a young lamb before the altar, spotless and calm. Watch closely, he said. This is what Abel understood. Seth knelt to see better. God does not need our animals. He does not need our grain. He owns the earth. What he seeks is obedience. Abel gave his best, and he gave it with delight. Cain brought what was convenient. That is why the fire accepted one and rejected the other. Seth frowned. So it was not the fruit that made God reject him? It was the heart, Adam said. Always the heart. He lifted the knife with reverence, not cruelty, and offered the animal upon the stones. As the smoke rose, Adam began to speak words Seth had heard before but never so intently. Most High, remember that the earth still has a remnant. Remember that not all have turned their backs. Look upon this son whom you appointed. Keep him from the way of Cain. Seth's eyes glistened in the glow of the fire. Father, when you were in the garden, did worship feel like this? Adam's gaze went far beyond the hill, beyond the horizon, beyond years. In Eden, he said slowly, there was no distance, no veil, no sacrifice. We spoke and he was there. But now we worship through symbols, through blood, through waiting. What you see today is man reaching back toward what he lost. Seth whispered, Then I will spend my days reaching. Adam smiled. Then Abel lives in you. Days later, a young hunter from among Adam's other sons returned from traveling near the land of Nod. His name was Aram, and dust clung to his hair and tunic. He came into the camp breathless. They have grown, he said. Cain's sons. They have built houses of stone. They play stringed instruments in the night. Their smiths strike iron and bronze. I heard it ringing like thunder. Their women wear gold. Their children run with no fear of God. Eve's face darkened. Have they forgotten what happened to Abel? Aram shook his head. They laugh at the story. Some say Abel was weak. Some say God was unfair. Some say Cain is the one who proved he was strong. Seth's jaw tightened. So they glorify the murderer and mock the righteous. Adam sighed. This is the danger. When men forget the presence of the Lord, they begin to honor violence. They raise monuments to the proud instead of lifting altars to the Holy One. Seth turned to Adam. Then we cannot stay silent. What will you do? Adam asked. We will build, Seth said. Not cities of stone, but generations of worship. If they celebrate the name of man, we will call on the name of the Lord. If their music praises themselves, ours will ascend to heaven. Eve's eyes shone. Then Abel's offering has found a new voice. Seth gathered his wife. a gentle woman with olive-toned skin and thick black hair braided simply, and the small household that had begun to grow around him. They went to a high place not far from Adam's altar, a place where the wind blew clean and the view of the stars was open. There Seth placed stones, not hastily, not carelessly, each one chosen, each one aligned. He spoke softly as he worked. This altar is not only for me, it is for those who will come after, for the sons of my sons, for the daughters who will marry righteous men, for all who will not bow to the vanity of Cain's line. His wife asked, "What will this place be called?" Seth looked toward the east, where Cain's city lights flickered faintly like restless fire. Then he looked upward at the first emerging stars. "This," he said, "will be the place where men call on the name of the Lord." He lifted his hands over his household. "God of our father Adam, God who formed us from the dust, God who did not abandon us when we fell, be remembered here. Let your name not be forgotten in the earth. Let righteousness not die. Let humility not be swallowed up by violence." The wind rose. A sense of nearness settled over them. Even the animals grazing nearby grew still. Seth's youngest brother whispered, "This feels different." Adam, who had quietly come to watch, nodded with emotion. "This," he said, "is what I had hoped for. The line of Cain will have their cities, but the line of Seth will have the presence." That night songs were sung. Not about men, not about conquests, but about the Creator. The children sat around the fire listening to Adam tell of Eden, of the trees, of the river that parted into four, of the sound of the Lord walking in the cool of the day. And in their eyes burned a hunger for what their parents had lost. But as the years passed, travelers began to pass between the two regions, the house of Seth and the cities of Cain. Traders brought metal tools, ornaments, dyed garments, and tales of festivals and music that went on into the night. Some of Seth's distant cousins were drawn to it. "They are men like us," one said. "They are still sons of Adam. Why keep apart? They have better instruments," another said. "They dance. They feast. They do not always speak of sin and sacrifice. They have daughters," another whispered. "Beautiful, bold, adorned." Seth heard of these murmurings, and he called the men together. "Listen to me," he said. "We are not better than them. We are not made from different dust. But we have chosen a different path. They build without God. We build with Him. They celebrate their strength. We surrender our strength. If we mix without discernment, soon our children will forget why we offer, why we stay humble, why we call on His name." One of the younger men asked, "So are we never to go to them?" Seth answered carefully, "Go to them to witness, not to become them. Trade with them, but do not take in their gods. Speak with them, but do not drink in their pride. If you marry among them, marry to win them to righteousness, not to abandon it." Adam, listening, was pleased. "This," he said quietly to Eve, "is the wisdom I longed for Cain to have. Seth guards the oil of worship like a lamp." Eve wiped a tear. Abel would have rejoiced to see this day. Time moved on. Seth's hair began to darken with age at the temples, but his spirit grew stronger. His wife conceived and bore him a son. When the child was placed in his arms, Seth stared at him for a long time. "His name," Seth said, "shall be Enosh." Adam asked, "Why Enosh?" "Because man is frail," Seth said. "Because we are but breath. Because we need God. Let every time we call His name, we remember our weakness." That day, Seth gathered everyone. Adam, Eve, his brothers and sisters, his servants, even the little ones, and he raised the child toward heaven. "From this son forward," he declared, "men shall publicly call on the name of the Lord. Not secretly, not in hiding, not only in times of sorrow. We will gather, we will lift our voices, and the earth will know that there is still a line loyal to the Creator." Voices rose around him, men, women, children. crying out together to the God of Adam. Far off, the sound reached even some wandering herdsmen from Cain's country. They stood on a distant ridge, listening. One of them said, "They worship still? After the curse? After the exile?" Another answered, almost in awe, "Yes, they worship, and they are not ashamed." The sun set over two different peoples that day, one building cities and legacies of iron, the other building altars and legacies of faith. But heaven looked upon the altar of Seth with favor, for in him the legacy of Abel was alive again. The years rolled into generations. The sons of Seth spread across the hills and valleys, building homes near rivers and fertile soil. Their children learned to till the ground and tend flocks in peace. They still sang songs of the Creator and offered sacrifices upon the altar of Adam. But in the east, the cities of Cain grew larger, their towers rising like fingers of pride against the sky. Their forges burned day and night. They learned to carve metal into tools, weapons, and ornaments. Music filled their streets. Laughter and revelry replaced reverence. One evening, Seth stood on a ridge overlooking the distant lights of Nod. His son Enosh stood beside him, now grown with sons of his own. "They multiply quickly," Enosh said, shading his eyes. "Their cities gleam like stars on earth." "They have filled the land with their works," Seth replied, "but they have emptied their souls." Enosh turned toward his father. "Yet some of our young men go to them. They say Cain's daughters are fair, their music sweet, their hands skilled in craft." Seth sighed deeply. "Fair to the eyes, yes, but eyes can deceive the heart. If they walk in the ways of the proud, the humble will forget heaven. When the sons of God desire what belongs to the sons of men, holiness becomes diluted." He gazed again toward the east. "Abel's blood cried from the ground once. If we are not careful, our hearts will begin to echo Cain's laughter." The wind swept through the valley, carrying with it faint music, the sound of distant drums and flutes. For the first time, that sound stirred curiosity instead of disgust among Seth's people. The dividing line had begun to blur. Months later, a group of travelers returned from the east. They were merchants who had gone to trade wool and grain for metal tools. Among them were young men of Seth's house, their eyes wide with stories of wonder. "They feast every moon," one said. "Their streets are bright with fire. Their women dance in gold veils. Their songs are like wind and water." Another added, "They spoke kindly to us. They said we should stay and marry among them. They no longer curse God. They simply forget him." Seth's heart tightened. He saw how their words carried fascination. "And you?" he asked. "Did you forget him too?" The young man lowered his gaze. Only for a moment. Eve, now frail but still wise, rose from her seat. "A moment is all the serpent needs," she said softly. "I know." That night, Seth gathered the elders beneath the stars. The air was heavy with the scent of burning wood and distant rain. "We are near a turning," he said. "If we yield to their songs, our children will forget our prayers." Enosh replied, "But can we command the hearts of the young? They are drawn to what glitters. They say we live in dust while others live in light." Seth closed his eyes. "Then they have forgotten that our light comes from heaven, not from torches." The elders fell silent. Each knew the truth but felt the creeping weight of change pressing on their camp. One season later, the first marriage took place between Seth's people and Cain's descendants. A young man named Jared, grandson of Enosh, returned from a journey to the east with a bride whose beauty was unlike any they had seen. Eyes dark as onyx, skin luminous under the sun, hair flowing like shadow. He said, "Her name is Naamah, daughter of Lamech, a maker of song. She has forsaken her father's idols. She will worship our God." But the people whispered. They saw her golden bangles, her colored veil, her pride when she spoke. Seth's heart was troubled, but he did not forbid it. He only said, "Then let it be as you say." May her heart truly seek the Lord. Days turned into months, and the customs of the East crept quietly into the West. Music of Cain's line was heard in the tents of Seth. Jewelry glittered where once there had been only simplicity. Voices that once sang to God now sang to pleasure. The daughters of men had found favor in the eyes of the sons of God, and the world began to change. Eve watched this from afar. Her old hands trembled as she whispered, "It begins again." Generations passed. The children of those mixed unions were mighty, strong, tall, fierce. They were called the Nephilim by the people, men of renown, warriors and leaders, but their strength was tainted by pride. They hunted both beast and man for sport. They spoke of conquering heaven itself. The songs of Seth's descendants changed. The altars grew cold. Smoke that once rose toward heaven became rare. Adam had long since been gathered to his rest, his grave marked by a circle of stones. The memory of Eden faded from men's hearts. Seth, now old and weary, walked one evening to the hill where his father's altar once burned. It was overgrown with moss and vines. He knelt before it, his robe brushing the wet earth. "O Lord," he said quietly, "the seed you appointed walks in shadow. The sons of God have taken the daughters of men, and now the world knows not your voice. The ground that once echoed praise now drinks the blood of its own." He lifted his eyes to the stars. "If judgment must come, remember mercy." Behind him, Enosh approached slowly, carrying a torch. "Father, you have done what you could. The world forgets, but heaven does not." Seth placed his hand upon Enosh's shoulder. "Then keep the flame alive. Let not the name of the Lord vanish. Promise me that you will teach your sons to call upon him." "I promise," Enosh said. Seth smiled faintly. "Then Abel still lives, through you." The old man's eyes grew heavy. He felt the nearness of his own end, yet also the whisper of hope, that one day, through their line, the world would be cleansed. Years after Seth's death, his descendants continued to multiply, though wickedness filled much of the earth. Among them rose a man unlike the rest, Enoch, the seventh from Adam through Seth's line. While others built monuments of pride, Enoch built a life of silence and prayer. He refused the feasts of Cain's descendants, refused the gold and the women and the songs. He walked alone through valleys, speaking to the invisible God. People called him strange, but when he spoke, his words carried the weight of heaven. "The Lord watches," Enoch said to the crowds. "He sees your violence, your pride, your corruption. You fill the earth with vanity, and you will reap destruction unless you return to righteousness." Some mocked him, others trembled, but Enoch's face glowed with an otherworldly light, and those who mocked him felt unease in their hearts. One day he gathered the faithful few and said, "My fathers told me that Abel's blood cried from the ground. I tell you now, the ground will cry again, not with one man's blood, but with the flood of nations." Then he turned his gaze upward. "But the Almighty will remember his promise to Seth. Out of this corruption will rise one who finds grace, one through whom the world will begin again." Not long after, Enoch disappeared. Some said he entered the wilderness and never returned. Others said he walked so closely with God that heaven took him alive. And so, even in a decaying world, the line of Seth still held one lamp alight, flickering, fragile, yet unextinguished. The sun hung low over the valley of Eden, painting the rocks in hues of gold and amber. Adam, aged and frail, lay upon a mat of woven reeds within his tent. His beard had grown silver white, his eyes clouded but still radiant with a trace of that divine spark he once knew face to face. Around him gathered his sons and daughters, among them Seth, his firstborn of hope, and Enosh, the grandson who carried his legacy. A gentle silence filled the tent, broken only by the crackle of the fire. "Come closer," Adam said, his voice fragile but steady. "The days of my breath are few." Seth knelt beside him, taking his father's hand. "We are here, Father." Adam's eyes searched the dim air as if he saw beyond the tense walls. "When I walked in the garden," he began, "there was no darkness, no pain, no death. The voice of the Lord was life to me. When we fell, that light withdrew, but not entirely. The Almighty placed a spark within us, a memory of his voice. That spark must not die." He looked at Seth, eyes moist. "The world grows wicked, my son. The sons of Cain boast in their might, and even our kin forget heaven. But the light, it must be preserved. Write it, teach it, hide it if you must, but let it not perish." Seth bowed his head, tears glistening. "I will guard it, Father." Adam smiled faintly. "Then you are truly the appointed one." A soft wind entered the tent. Adam's last breath escaped like a whisper of peace. Eve wept quietly beside him, and Seth covered his father's face with linen. For a moment, the air seemed to tremble, as though heaven itself mourned the passing of the first man. That night, Seth sat outside, looking at the stars. "You spoke with God face to face," he murmured. "I will seek him through faith." Years after Adam's death, Seth gathered his sons, Enosh, Kenan, and the young men of his house, to the foot of a mountain whose summit pierced the clouds. Its face gleamed faintly under the moonlight. "This mountain," Seth said, "shall be our place of remembrance. Here we will write the wisdom of our fathers. For words fade, but stone endures." They carried heavy slabs of smooth rock and set them upright in a circle. On each slab, they carved the sayings Adam had spoken, of creation, of Eden, of the promise that one day a seed would crush evil's head. Each word was chiseled with reverence and sealed with oil. Enosh asked, "Why in stone? Why not on parchment, as the men of Nod do?" Seth answered, "Because fire will come, the flood of pride, then the flood of water. These stones will stand when all else is washed away. And if men find them, they will know there was once truth upon the earth." As the chisels struck the rock, sparks flew like tiny stars, lighting the night. The sound echoed through the valley, not as noise, but as a holy rhythm. They called it the Covenant of Stone. That night, as they prayed around the circle, a pillar of mist rose from the mountain's peak, glowing faintly blue. Seth felt the presence of God and said softly, "Father, I have done as you commanded." One night, as Seth watched the stars alone, a brilliant light appeared on the summit of the mountain. It was not the moon or fire, but something alive, a radiance that moved with purpose. Seth ascended with trembling hands, each step heavy with awe. At the top stood two beings clothed in light, their faces veiled, their voices like the sound of flowing water. "Do not fear, son of Adam," said one. "We are sent from the presence to speak of what must come." Seth bowed low. "What message do you bring?" The being extended a hand, from which flowed a stream of golden light forming symbols in the air, ancient and unreadable, yet Seth's spirit understood them. "The world will grow violent," the messenger said. "The sons of your brother will corrupt the daughters of your line. Giants will rise, kings of ruin will fill the earth. But the Almighty has chosen your seed for salvation. Through your descendants shall come one who finds grace, one who will survive the cleansing waters." Seth's breath trembled. "A flood of water?" "Yes," said the other messenger. "The fountains of the deep shall break open, and the heavens will pour their grief upon the earth. But before that day you must preserve the wisdom you hold, the record of beginnings, of the stars, of the laws of the Most High. Seal it upon the mountain in stone and clay. For after the waters, mankind will seek the old paths, and your words will guide them." The light began to fade. Seth called out, "Who will this Savior be?" The voice answered, "One of your line. His name will be Noah." Then the light dissolved into the sky like morning mist. Seth fell to his knees, face buried in the ground, his heart pounding with both fear and gratitude. Years later, as the people of Seth began to multiply, corruption spread like wildfire. Violence, lust, and pride seeped even into the camp of the righteous. Yet Seth, now aged and full of wisdom, stood firm. He gathered Enosh, Kenan, and Mahalalel, his faithful sons, and said, "The world turns from its maker, but we will turn toward him. The messengers spoke true. Judgment will come. Let us seal the knowledge our Father entrusted to us." In a deep cave beneath the mountain, they built a chamber of stone. Inside, they placed tablets engraved with the story of creation, the fall, the promise of redemption, and the prophecy of a coming deliverer. They wrote upon both stone and clay, using iron styluses hardened in fire. When the last tablet was laid in place, Seth prayed aloud, "O God of Adam, O Creator of all flesh, if the flood must come, remember this testimony. Let it rise again when the earth is renewed. Let the children of the future know that once there were those who called on your name." The men sealed the entrance with a great slab of rock. They carved upon it a symbol, a vine wrapping around a star, the same vision Eve had seen when Seth was born. As they stepped back, the earth quaked lightly, and a low hum filled the air. The mountains seemed to breathe. Enosh whispered, "He accepts it." Seth's days neared their end. His hair was white as snow, his eyes dim yet peaceful. He called his sons and grandsons to his side, men strong, noble, and yet burdened by the world's corruption. "My children," he said, "the earth is heavy with sin. Violence grows like thorns, and pride has blinded the sons of Cain. Even among us, hearts grow cold. But remember this, we were not chosen for power, but for preservation. Keep the knowledge of the Most High alive." He took Enosh's hand. "Teach your children what Adam taught me, that the dust remembers its maker." As the evening sun poured through the tent flap, Seth raised his other hand toward the mountain. "The flood will come, but so will renewal. Our line shall not perish. From us shall rise Noah, the restorer of the covenant." Tears ran down his cheeks. "Tell the world that light came through dust, and dust carried light." Seth lay back upon his mat, his breath shallow but calm. He closed his eyes as the last light of sunset filled the room. Outside, the mountain glowed faintly, as if in tribute. When the people buried him beside Adam and Eve, the heavens rumbled softly, not in anger, but remembrance. The wind carried his name through the valleys, Seth, the appointed seed. And deep within the sealed chamber of stone, the writings of Adam and Seth waited silent, uncorrupted, for the day the floodwaters would come and go, and the world would once again seek the forgotten wisdom of the beginning. Generations rolled through time like rivers carving stone. Seth's children multiplied, spreading across the fertile valleys and mountains his hands once touched. But the more they grew, the dimmer their faith became. The once sacred songs faded beneath the roar of men who glorified strength over spirit. Enosh's sons still prayed, but many prayed only in words. The altars of Seth, once burning with devotion, now stood cold and overgrown. Yet among the faithful a remnant remained, a few who clung to the ancient teachings written in stone and hidden within the mountain vault. From those tablets, the prophecy of the flood and the promise of a righteous deliverer continued to be whispered among them. "A son will rise," they said, "a comforter who will rebuild what sin has ruined." Through the generations came Kenan, then Mahalalel, then Jared. And in Jared's day, the world became darker still. The children of Cain had filled it with cities of metal and monuments of pride. Yet one light still flickered among Seth's seed. A man named Enoch, the seventh from Adam. Enoch walked with God when no one else did. He called men to repentance and prophesied that judgment would come. But one day he simply vanished. Some said God took him so he would not taste death. Others said he was carried into the heavens as a sign that the faithful would not always perish with the corrupt. After Enoch's departure, the world felt emptier. But Jared comforted his people. He is not lost. He went ahead to prepare the way for the promise. Time pressed forward. Jared died, and his son Methuselah ruled as the elder of the people. He was wise, patient, and strong, yet he watched helplessly as the sons of God mixed freely with the daughters of men. Violence filled the earth once more. Corruption spread even into Seth's camp. One night, while thunder rolled across the horizon, Methuselah's wife bore a son. When the midwives placed the child in his arms, they trembled, for the infant's eyes shone with a soft, unearthly light. Methuselah held him close, whispering, "He is different. There is peace upon him." They named the child Lamech, meaning the lowly one, in hope that humility might preserve what pride had almost destroyed. As the boy grew, he listened to the old stories of Adam and the garden, of Seth and the covenant of stone, of the messengers who foretold the flood. He would often sit upon the hill where his ancestors had prayed, gazing toward the sky. "Will the promise truly come?" he once asked Methuselah. His father answered, "The word of God does not die, my son. It waits." Many years later, when Lamech had become a man, he took a wife named Zillah, a gentle woman with eyes like still water. But sorrow hung upon the world, the air thick with violence, the rivers tainted with blood. Men no longer feared the Almighty. Even the beasts had grown savage. In that time Zillah conceived. During her labor, lightning split the sky and rain fell, though it was not the season for rain. The people feared the sign. But when the child emerged, the storm ceased at once. A stillness swept across the camp, and a soft light bathed the tent. Lamech held the child, and tears filled his eyes. "This one," he whispered, "will comfort us in our toil from the ground which the Lord has cursed." He named him Noah, meaning rest and comfort. Methuselah came and laid his aged hands upon the child. "This," he said, "is the fruit of Seth's promise, the seed the messengers spoke of. The time draws near when the world will drown in its own corruption, but this child shall rise above it." That night, as Noah slept, his cradle glowed faintly in the torchlight, a sign none forgot. Years passed. Noah grew into a quiet man, pure of heart and slow to anger. While others mocked the teachings of their fathers, he remained faithful. He spent his evenings beside the ancient mountain of Seth, reading the faint carvings that still survived upon its face. One evening, while he knelt in prayer, the air changed. The wind stilled. A deep rumble rose from beneath the earth, followed by a voice. Not thunder, but something deeper. "Noah," it said, "the earth is filled with violence. Flesh has corrupted its way. The time has come for cleansing. But I will make a covenant with you. Build an ark of refuge, for through you the promise shall live." Noah fell upon his face, trembling. "Who am I, Lord, that you speak to me?" "Faith," the voice answered, "is worth more than strength. Obedience weighs more than kingdoms. Through you, the seed of Seth shall not perish." When Noah rose, the stars above burned brighter than ever. The mountain glowed faintly, and from its cracks a trickle of water flowed, the first sign of the deep preparing to break. Lamech, now old and weary, called Noah to his side. "My son," he said, "when you were born, the ground trembled. When you grew, the skies listened. You are chosen as Seth was chosen, as Adam was chosen before him. Remember what I now tell you. The flood is not the end. It is the beginning." He coughed, gripping Noah's arm. "The world mocks righteousness, but you must not answer mockery with anger. Answer with faith. The ark you will build will carry not just flesh, it will carry the covenant." Noah bowed his head. "I will do as the Lord commands." Lamech smiled faintly. "Then Seth's light still burns." When Lamech died, Methuselah buried him beneath the same mountain where Seth had laid the tablets of wisdom. Over the grave, Noah built a small altar and offered the first fruits of his harvest. As the smoke rose, A soft rain began to fall. Not the flood yet to come, but a promise. From that moment, Noah walked with God, the last righteous man upon the earth, heir of the covenant that began with Adam and was guarded by Seth. And in heaven, the record of their faith remained, a golden thread unbroken through the ages, binding Eden's memory to mankind's last hope.